To go. Thank you. All right, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are going to get started. I want to thank everyone for being here today, in particular, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, Councilmember Nick Bankston. The purpose of today's finance hearing is to review the proposed spending plan for the Federal Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant, CARES Act funding available for the City of Columbus. The city receives Cdbg funding from HUD each year, but today's presentations will relate to the supplementary funding we received in relation to the pandemic. These dollars represent important investments in Columbus neighborhoods that focus on the housing, development, and infrastructure needs of low and moderate income households. This hearing and the public comment period, currently open until June 15th, are opportunities to let us know how this grant can have the greatest impact in our neighborhoods. We encourage residents to submit comments to grantsmgmt@columbus.gov, grantsmgmt@columbus.gov. So first up, we will hear an overview from Finance Deputy Director Eric Russell before moving into presentations from the departments who manage these grants. Before turning things over to Deputy Director Russell, are there any comments from my colleague?
Sure. Just want to say thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership on this. You know, Cdbg funding is a blessing, and it's also not the easiest funding to work with. And so having an opportunity to share with our residents, but also kudos to the Department of Finance for being innovative in their thoughts process this year and taking that feedback. So just encourage folks out there in the community to please give us that feedback, and really interested to see what we learned today.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bankston. With that, I will turn it over to Deputy Director Russell.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Pro Tem Brown, Councilmember Bankston. Thank you for the opportunity to participate today and for holding this hearing. In our opinion, we very much value the public comment periods and the opportunity to obtain this feedback so that we're able to maximize the value for our communities through the Community Development Block Grant. Before I begin, I would like the opportunity to quickly acknowledge my grants management team. I'm blessed every day, truly, to work with such a talented and dedicated group of public servants. So I will ask that each individual stand as I announce them. Grants Management Coordinator Lucy McMahon, who leads our team.
Hello.
Management Analyst Gabrielle Kennedy.
Hello.
Intern Extraordinaire Charles Van Leuven, who comes from Ohio State, John Glenn College of Public Affairs, like me and Ms. Ellingson. And then Phil Hansen is our fourth member. He's at home right now, just dealing with a sick child. So we will give him kudos through the screen. So I just want to introduce those individuals. We can't do what we do without their support and their dedication. As you mentioned, annually, the city does receive funding from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, through the Community Development Block Grant. So we do use the term Cdbg as the abbreviation for those who are listening at home and are not familiar. In this instance, we'll be speaking to the Supplemental Appropriation. So in 2020, the United States Congress did allocate and appropriate $2.2 trillion for COVID relief. Of that $2.2 trillion, $5 billion was allocated for Cdbg itself. The city received approximately $9.3 million of that $5 billion. So today, we'll be speaking to the allocation, or the proposed allocation, of additional funding from that $9.3 million. It's important to note that of these items, or of the $9.3 million, all of the dollars do have to be tied to COVID relief in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So these are requirements that are in addition to our annual Cdbg funding allocations, and we'll talk about those later in the summer as we finalize our allocations and our program identification, and then come to council for approval to use those dollars. But for today's scope, we are narrowing it to the Cdbg CV, or the CARES Act component of that funding. So with that, the city has previously sought to appropriate funding from the Cdbg CV allocation for certain projects. At this time, we're seeking to appropriate an additional $3.8 million from our total $9.3 million. In identifying the projects and activities that may be funded, we considered those projects to meet several key criteria. The first are projects that are necessary to prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID-19, so based on statutory requirement. Second is to address an immediate, unfunded, or urgent need within our communities. Third, to contribute to the prevention or elimination of blight. Fourth is to provide a benefit through community development within areas occupied by those in the low to moderate income areas or calculations in those brackets. And lastly, those that are expected to provide long-lasting benefit to our citizens of Columbus. So those are the primary criteria that we do utilize in identifying opportunities to utilize this funding. And we consider both internal city projects as well as needs of our public-facing facilities and the opportunity to support those that are in the public, our not-for-profit partners who are implementing programs daily for our citizens. As a result, we've identified 7 projects for inclusion within the substantial amendment that we're discussing today. And I recall when Director Lombardi first asked me to rejoin the city and serve as his deputy, one of his ideas was to reorganize the grants management section to place that unit under asset management. So we see really the fruit of that reorganization through today's efforts and what you'll see later in the summer with Cdbg's annual allocation. So the grants management team that sits behind me joined construction management, real estate management, facilities management, and fleet management within my asset management umbrella. And now we're seeing the results through significant and intentional collaboration that really manifests itself in the projects that we'll talk about. The city and our partners are benefiting greatly by identifying where there are gaps in our current facilities, as well as opportunities in the community to serve. So that collaboration through construction, facilities, and the grants team really comes to bear fruit for our citizens. So we've invited today both city personnel and community partners to participate and to discuss in a bit more detail their project plans. Lucy McMahon will quarterback the discussion of those projects that the finance department will be leading and that we oversee. Morgan Wade, who is also behind me, will discuss the Columbus Department of Recreation and Parks. So those 2 departments will lead the primary projects that we'll be funding, though they'll be working with other individuals and other organizations to do so. In addition to the project-specific funding, we are proposing to allocate $425,000 in Cdbg CV funds for administrative costs. These funds are expected to contribute to the payment of staff costs, salaries, and benefits for those individuals who work on Cdbg CV efforts, the costs associated with monitoring the various Cdbg CV projects and subrecipients as required by federal regulation, the provision of technical assistance to other city departments and our nonprofit partners. And lastly, we will fund the Cdbg CV allocation of any single audit costs and related follow-up, as those costs are allocable. The overall impact is that this allocation is expected to cover multiple years of Cdbg CV at administrative costs, thus appropriately relieving the general fund of costs that it would otherwise have to bear, and we're doing so in a fully compliant manner. So we're able to generate value for our citizens, for the city overall, and also relieve pressure from the general fund as necessary. So thank you for your time, your attention, and collaboration, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Russell. I don't think we have questions at this juncture, so we can move forth with, I believe, Lucy McMahon, you're up next, right? So our grants management coordinator, the floor is yours.
It's my first time using the mic, so. Okay, thank you. I think we're green. So I just want to first stress again that we're seeking public comment through this process. You can email us at grantsmanagement or mgmt at columbus.gov. And also, the comment period will end on June 15th. So the first project that I wanted to go over for this substantial amendment is the neighborhood city HVAC improvements. The Department of Finance and Management is budgeting $1.5 million to improve HVAC systems and at least one of the city-owned community resource buildings. The design and construction of the neighborhood city HVAC improvement project will be managed by the Department of Finance and Management Construction Management section. Construction Management is currently prioritizing the HVAC projects in determining the needs for the Cdbg CV funds to be allocated. The HVAC improvements will increase air ventilation in public spaces, which will prevent the spread of COVID-19. Before we start to hear from my colleagues concerning their projects, are there any questions about the neighborhood city HVAC improvements?
Have you selected the center?
No, we're looking at the neighborhood health clinics. Specifically, I think the one on the south side seems to need some larger improvements. And so they're just trying to work out how to prioritize right now.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so the next speaker is Capital Crossroads. Grants management plans to modify a subaward agreement with Capital Crossroads Special Improvement District, increasing a budget by $120,533 for the organization to construct downtown public restrooms. We have Special Project Manager Mark Klingler here to present on the project.
Come on down to the front podium. Thank you for being here, Mr. Klingler, and outlining the project.
Council members Brown and Bankston, Deputy Director Russell, ladies and gentlemen, the Downtown Permanent Public Restrooms Project will provide 3 single-stall restrooms in the public right-of-way in downtown Columbus. These restrooms will address a serious deficiency in how we've been providing for the public's safety and well-being. As we all know, restrooms, although we know that restroom facilities are critical for preventing the spread of infectious diseases, including COVID-19, Columbus, like so many other cities, has really only a handful of restrooms that are truly intended for and are readily accessible to the public. 2 years ago, when the coronavirus closed restaurants and office towers and public buildings, people who found themselves downtown for whatever reason and who didn't have access to private facilities, they had no safe or dignified way of meeting one of the most basic of human needs. This project, which has not yet been put to bid, will be funded exclusively with community development block grant funds. The budget, including today's amendment, is $955,533. Now, this investment will give downtown Columbus a powerful tool for controlling the ongoing spread of COVID-19. Even more important for this purpose than the toilets themselves are the 2 opportunities that each of these restrooms offers for people to clean their hands. There will be a sink mounted on the exterior of each of the units and hand sanitizer dispenser on the interior. The restrooms chosen for this project are prefabricated structures called Portland loos. They're durable, they're easy to clean, and they're wheelchair accessible, and there will be no charge to the public for their use. Also included in the scope of the project is the installation of dispensers for menstrual hygiene products, which are also provided at no charge. Beyond the public health benefits, providing good public restrooms will simply demonstrate that we're a city that cares about the well-being, the convenience and comfort of everyone, whether they're residents or transit riders, convention attendees, people who are downtown on business, or people experiencing homelessness. Our organization, CID Public Services Association, is proud to be a partner in this undertaking, and I'd like to thank City Council and the City of Columbus for making it possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Klingler. Before you go, I want to highlight, underscore for everyone watching, your mention of menstrual products and their inclusion, and just take a moment to appreciate that just like toilet paper, tampons and pads are needed for a bodily function. And so we're really glad to hear the inclusion of all of the above. That's very, very important for a true public restroom. So thank you for highlighting that. And then could you give us a sense of, I know that the CID has been working on this proposal for actually quite some time, recognizing that this is a real need in downtown. Are there benchmarks you're looking towards to understand, A, if the program is a success, B, if more restrooms are needed? Like, how does one measure the use and need of restrooms or more restrooms? What are those metrics?
That's a very good question. As you may be aware, CID Public Services Association has provided portable toilets as a stopgap measure downtown. And initially in that project, we had counters that measured how many times the doors were opened and closed, and that gave us some measure of their use. On average, with those restrooms, we were seeing about 200 uses per unit per week, and there were, at that time, about 16 of these. Since then, we have different units that are not able to count, but the permanent restrooms will have counters. We'll be able to measure what the usages are. Now, we won't be able to use those statistics to compare with anything in the past, of course, but one somewhat subjective measure will be our own organization's experience with cleaning the public right-of-way, because that's something we very frequently deal with, people who make the sidewalk their restroom. And we have already seen a decline in incidents of those situations with portable toilets. So that will certainly be one measure.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. Any questions?
Yeah, you said there's going to be 3. Did you mention the exact locations, or are those still being determined?
The exact location has been determined for those 3. One location is Lynn Street at 33 North High Street next to Dakota's headquarters. The other location is 3rd Street at Broad on the pavilion in front of, or the plaza in front of the Chase Tower, or at the edge of that plaza. And the 3rd location is on Long Street at the intersection of High, next to Southeast Healthcare's building.
Got it. And then, and I'm sure this is probably part of it, but the ongoing upkeep and safety or monitoring of that, is that going to be done by the city, or is it in partnership with some of our other special improvement district partners?
The funding will come from the city, as well as the county and probably some other entities that have yet to be determined. SID Public Services Association has agreed to participate in that cleaning and to actually perform the cleaning, and we've already gained experience with that with our portable toilets, and we're very invested in making this a successful project, and our team is pretty good at cleaning.
Yep, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Grants Management plans to enter into a subaward agreement for $250,000 with Sanctuary Night. Executive Director Hannah Estabrook is here to speak on behalf of the project.
President Pro Tem Brown, good to see you. Councilmember Bankston, thank you so much for having me. So Sanctuary Night, as you know, is a drop-in center. It's for individuals who are involved in or vulnerable to human trafficking. And so at our drop-in center, they're able to access things like food, a hot shower now that we're in our new building, clothing, just basic necessities. But in addition to that, we now are able to provide things like counseling, case management, and in our new facility, we have just all-important healthcare clinic built into their safe space. And we also have hired survivors of sex trafficking to employ. So when women walk in, they're met with people who have been in their shoes, and that is making all the difference, we're finding. So we're here to ask for $250,000. This is a really exciting time in the life of our organization. We have been around for 5 years, but we are looking to grow immensely. And so this money will help us retain and hire necessary program staff in order to build capacity and meet more needs in our community. You know, we were around before COVID. We were present. We never missed a week, throughout the pandemic, and we hope to never have to close our doors. Ultimately, as you know, our goal is to be 24/7. And what we learned is that, this population has a tremendous amount of healthcare trauma. And what that tends to mean is that they don't necessarily trust a lot of the healthcare information that's there. But we've been able to garner a lot of trust with these women. And so I think most importantly, what we can do is leverage that trust by providing accurate, up-to-date information and by connecting them with important resources. We've partnered throughout the pandemic with Columbus Public Health to do some vaccine clinics to provide vaccine incentives. We'll continue to do that. And I think just lastly, because I'm a person who has not only budget line items and statistics in my head, but also I'm a collector of stories, just to say that probably my highlight of last week was I had 2 women who work for Sanctuary Night, survivors of sex trafficking themselves, peer support specialists. And they came up to me unsolicited, separate from each other, and they said, I just want to let you know that my life has been transformed since working here. They both began in January. And one of them, just with tears rolling down her face, said, I am the best version of myself that I've ever been. And so what we recognize is that we believe, transforming lives for people who are marginalized on the West Side, but also for the survivor employees that we're able to bring on board. Thank you so much for having me. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Ms. Estabrook. Congratulations on the new facility. It is beautiful, and I really enjoyed being able to see it. And I will just underscore what you said in your presentation, that the facility is fantastic, and there are really important infrastructure pieces there, like the clinic, hot shower, all those things. But of course, it is also only as good as the team you have there and the empathy that they can extend.
That's right.
So thank you for making sure that all the pieces fit together, not just the physical ones, but the experiential ones too. Thank you. Councilmember, anything?
No, I just want to underscore, no questions for me. I mean, it's a great program, and, we're partners in Franklinton in the work that we do, and so excited that we can do this. But I think this highlights and underscores, Madam Chair, the work of the Department of Finance and how we're being more innovative of how we're using our CDBG dollars. So projects like this are really encouraging. So that's why those public comments, that application process from community organizations is so critical.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And back to you, Ms. McMahon.
Next, grants management is supporting construction management and Columbus Public Health in renovations at the Columbus Department, our Health Department building, located at 240 Parsons Avenue. Here to speak on behalf of the next project is Anita Clark, Assistant Health Commissioner.
Good afternoon, President Pro Tem Brown and Councilmember Bankston. Thanks for having me here today, and really appreciate the consideration in providing Columbus Public Health with $1 million for renovations and improvements to our building and services. As we know, due to COVID-19, we've had an increase because of the economic, mental health of the community and our services. We certainly know the drug addiction issue that we have in our city, and our mental health issues, along with violence in our community, has really added some needs that we have at our building. With the funds, CPH will be able to expand and improve various programs at 240 Parsons Avenue. These funds will be utilized to increase our capacity and serve the community in a variety of ways. CPH will be adding additional alcohol and drug prevention and treatment rooms so that more clients can be served and hopefully recover from their addiction by providing more centralized location for our neighborhood social services teams. They're kind of spread all out throughout our building right now, which makes it kind of tough when we're providing services. By continuing to expand our current clinical services, this will ensure our residents in the city will have clinics to go and take care of their health care issues that may arise, and also to vaccinate them against the COVID-19. These are just a few programs that CPH will grow and expand to continue to meet the needs of our community. I really thank you again for your support of Columbus Public Health, and if at this time, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here and for the submission for these funds, which are critically needed by one of the most important arms of our city, as we've all so much come to appreciate over these last several years especially. Is there anything from my vice chair? Thank you so much. Back to you, Ms. McMahon.
Grants management will continue to support COVID-19 safe recreation projects managed by the Columbus Recreation and Parks Department through this substantial amendment. Morgan Wade, Management Analyst 2 from Columbus Recreation and Parks Department, is here to present on the Safe Recreation Cdbg CV project, budget increase, and the new public broadband in parks project.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here this afternoon. The first thing I would like to speak about is the Safe Recreation project that has a total project cost of $530,000. $130,000 of that would support the costs of motorized gym divider screens at 16 recreation facilities, including community recreation centers and athletic complexes. These dividers allow rec and parks to continue to offer our programming such as summer camps, classes, clinics, practices, and leagues to more Columbus residents by segmenting our larger gyms into smaller, fully functioning spaces. This was a huge issue, at the height of the pandemic when we were trying to find partner facilities and spaces across the city of Columbus where we could have these small groups of, primarily in our summer camp program, because that's when this first hit. But, because we could only really have, even if it was a large gym, maybe 16 students in the same room. So with these dividers they've really been a long time coming, they allow us to make the best use of these larger spaces into smaller program areas, and they make our department, and by extension our residents, more resilient during any necessary future tightening of a program, and actually just concurrently allow us to offer more programming even under non-COVID circumstances in the same areas. So the project is currently under construction, and this is actually a correction, would be an expenditure correction for the design of this. We had to get started on it so that we could, serve the most residents at this while the pandemic was happening here. The second project is for $400,000 to develop the Dakota Median Park on Dakota Avenue, Street Island, which is in Franklinton, and it's between Rich Street on the south and State Street at the north. So we've been engaged with the community and other city stakeholders on this Street Island Park and two others, at least for the past 5 years, and we're now in detailed design. Franklinton residents do have access to Dodge Park and Community Center, but there are very few actual neighborhood parks that residents can just walk to. For active recreation, for play, for socializing with neighbors, friends, family. COVID-19 and the isolation that came about because of it taught us how valuable our physical and mental well-being is, in addition to just, the pandemic had a large impact on physical and mental well-being. And having safe outdoor spaces to congregate, to just wave to your neighbors and talk, in a safe, socially distanced environment, and for kids to blow off some steam was really important. Some neighborhoods were impacted disproportionately by not having the spaces for relaxation and socialization. Some of the improvements planned for the Dakota Median Park include walking paths, an open-air shelter, a playground, like a safely fenced playground, and some site furnishings such as picnic tables and benches. The second project that I would like to speak on is the broadband in public parks. And let me grab it. So we have been working with Grants Management and the Department of Technology to bring broadband access to parks, centers, and pools in some of our low and moderate income communities. The project budget of $250,000 will enable public Wi-Fi access in neighborhoods that are known to have low digital access currently. The locations are still under determination. They're going through a feasibility review with Department of Technology. Digital access became even more critical during the pandemic when remote learning and remote work became the norm and an expectation for residents. And in some of these neighborhoods that we're looking at, they were, again, disproportionately not able to continue learning in the way that they would like to, or working, as they would like to. So this is an opportunity to improve that situation and bring some equity to those neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hear there is a feasibility study underway.
Yes.
Do you know how many, I forget if I just didn't hear you, how many parks will ultimately be covered by this amount of money? And again, I'm interested in, I'm sure this is under development still, but in kind of measuring success and usage, so we know how much to budget possibly for more parks. I imagine that we have far too many low digital access neighborhoods in our city, so we will not be able to get to all of them in this first round. And I will want to pay attention to metrics so that we know what we can aim for.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are 6 different locations that are kind of under review, and we think that it's probably about 2 to 3 that will be able to be served through this. One thing I think that's important is that this would be leveraging some capital improvement money from the Department of Technology. They're actually, and builds on, so they'll have that, it's still kind of being worked out, but they will be bringing fiber to the neighborhood, and then the Wi-Fi piece, kind of like, I guess you could say it's like a last mile access, would be funded through Cdbg.
Got it. Okay. Questions? All right. Thank you so much. I am going to let Ms. McMahon close out her piece, kick it back to Deputy Director Russell for any final comments, and then I'll kick it back to myself.
I just want to say that I'm really excited about all of these projects, and working with all these wonderful people has been really fantastic. There's a lot of passion here. It's a lot of really bright minds that are also really excited to spend these Cdbg dollars on some really impactful projects. So I want to say thank you for coming and for all that you do. I want to say one more time, grants, mgmt@columbus.gov. I got it right that time. Please feel free to email us. And one additional thing while I have the floor, we currently have an application out to the public for regular Cdbg dollars. Nonprofits are eligible for programmatic and facility upgrades dollars. We have some information out there on the internet, but again, feel free to email if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. I think this has been really informative for all of us today, and it hopefully provides a good overview of the items that we're expecting to fund. I think it was really a good opportunity from what Morgan Wade mentioned to indicate how we expect to use a relatively fungible funding source like Cdbg to really help bolster a number of the initiatives that we're working on in the city. So the $250,000 in the example of Rec and Parks in and of itself does not allow us to hit every low to moderate income park, but it does get us somewhere down the road. And we, in turn, are consistently working with our financial operations side of the Department of Finance to identify how we can continue to take some projects out of the capital budget and out of the operating budget, or in other instances, leverage those funding sources to do more work. So whether that's 240 Parsons and helping to bring that public serving space up to speed, or it's our 3 HVAC facilities or health centers that we're going to do HVAC work on. Southside Head Start, West Family Health and Wellness, and Maloney are our 3 current target spots. We're able to leverage other funding sources and use Cdbg to help get more done for our people. So it's an exciting time to be in the grant space and to be able to make a solid, tangible difference, and we're continuing to work through that. As Ms. McMahon mentioned, this is the time of year when we go through the annual allocation of project funding. So we initiated the annual allocation estimating process in the fall. We do have additional dollars that we're working on allocating, and we'll be bringing those to council. Next steps for Cdbg CV will be the ordinance that we'll file at the end of the public comment period. Then we'll move into that annual allocation process. So any feedback, any comments we receive from the public, we receive from council or other members of the administration, we're then able to not only leverage for purposes of the Cdbg CV conversation, but we also have the opportunity to potentially fund other items of the Cdbg annual allocation. So that the same eligibility requirements apply to that Cdbg annual funding that we use for Cdbg CV, with the exception of the mandated COVID-19 component. So it's an exciting time to look at what the laundry list is of projects that we can use to help benefit the public, and we'll do the best that we can. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you so much, Deputy Director Russell and the whole finance team. I want to acknowledge that my colleague, Councilmember Emmanuel Remy, was able to join us virtually, and I would like to make sure we allow an opportunity for him to offer any closing comments and for Vice Chair Bankston. I will start with Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, President Pro Tem Brown. Appreciate and thank you for your leadership with this, and to Deputy Director Eric Russell and team, everyone else that's there. I just want to say thank you for all the work that's gone into this. This may be one of the more substantive CDBG hearings that I've heard since I've been on council. And so I appreciate the work that's been put into this and the work that will continue. These are important dollars to be spent to benefit the public in the areas that they are meant to be. And so just appreciative of the work that I've seen through this hearing and look forward to many more great conversations to come. So thank you very much, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Vice Chair?
I think I'm breaking the rules, but I have one more question actually I thought of.
There are no rules. You write the rules.
But and it's also, I think, final comment as well. So, and today we're talking about the CARES Act allocation specifically, but really quickly, high level, and we don't have to go into details, just to help temper folks' expectations. In general, you know, what can CDBG be used for, in particular this CARES Act dollars, so folks know the distinction and the two. So as they're giving comment, they're keeping that in mind and framing their suggestions in that way. And there have been great things that we've done. You know, the Linden Fresh Market in Linden was funded through CDBG dollars. The market that has come into Wheatland Avenue and the park there. So there's many things that we can do, but then specifically the CARES Act, I know there's some restrictions.
Certainly, Councilmember Bankston. I think there are three national objectives that any CDBG expenditures must tie to. And those three are, first, to address an immediate, unfunded, and urgent need within our communities. So that's an option. Second is to contribute to the prevention or elimination of blight. And the third is to, well, in this case for CARES Act, to projects that are necessary to prevent, prepare for, or to respond to COVID-19. And then the fourth, I said three, I apologize. The fourth is to provide benefit through community development within areas that are occupied by those in low to moderate income areas. So for our CARES Act supplemental funding, that COVID-19 link does apply, which becomes a fourth across-the-board criterion. Mm-hmm. For the annual CDBG dollars, only the other three apply. And I will ask Ms. McMahon to supplement that answer. Anything that I missed? Yeah.
That was great. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and that's all I had. And then, again, just thank you all for your work on this and thinking outside the box and figuring out how we engage the community around this sort of funding. I love these kind of conversations because it's in the weeds and it's wonky, but it is a source of funding that we have as a city to really do some things that respond to our community. So thank you again, Madam Chair, for hosting and your leadership, and thank you all for the hard work you're doing.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the call out, Vice Chair, to overall CDBG spending each year. You know, we submit a plan. We have to stay in constant contact with the federal government about it. I appreciate the finance team really working on how to incorporate more and better public feedback into that process and how the city can be even more exacting with its usage of those funds year over year. Another thing I will just add is that CDBG is not, that funding that comes from the federal government, it's not population-based per se, right? It's not a per capita, strictly per capita formula. So we really, it has those specific purposes that Deputy Director Russell outlined. And just because we're the largest city in Ohio does not mean we get the largest amount of CDBG dollars. And it is important for us to really be laser focused on that mission of that HUD program in order to spend them in the ways in which the federal government outlines. So thank you to my colleagues for being here and joining us today. I again want to remind everyone that the public comment period for the action plan remains open until June 15th. And we do hope to continue receiving feedback on how best to utilize this grant. Thank you to the departments for their presentations this afternoon. I want to give another compliment to the finance team. particularly for, what we saw here today. Councilmember Remy called out sort of the substantive nature of this hearing, which I agree with, but particularly what I'm struck by is the way in which finance was able to work cross-departmentally to really bring in needs of others in the city, and that's an internal focus, and then also have an external focus. And I think that is really in alignment with the intent of CDBG year over year too. So thank you for that focus, for working in all those ways and bringing to us these really well thought out amendments. Thank you to our external partners for being here and presenting about your projects. And I will go ahead and call out that email address one more time so that I get bonus points from Lucy, grantsmgmt@columbus.gov. So please do not hesitate to write us. We want to hear from you. And thank you again. With that concludes our finance hearing today.